How do everybody? So I've got quite a horrible story here. I haven't read much of it, only the first paragraph or so. It does seem to be quite a disgusting story about a person who was hired to work in the NHS, a migrant worker, and he's gone on to commit some pretty disgusting attacks against patients. Now we do keep getting told that we do need mass immigration to fill job slots, etc., etc. But we need to also be asking what are the consequences of hiring people, especially from third world countries, where educational standards and standards towards different groups of people may not necessarily be the same as what we have in Western countries. These are real and measurable differences which can be observed between different groups of people. That isn't to say every single individual person in any group is an identical automaton who is directly comparable to every other person, but you do get general themes running through cultures, values, and traditions from different parts of the world, and we cannot reject the fact that that is a reality, and we can only start to expect that maybe more cases like this are going to happen. So I'm very old. Another thing as well, this story was from 19th of June this year, 2024. Now, I've only just found out about this, and the one thing that struck me the most is how more of a thing hasn't been made of this story, because it is quite a shocking story from what I've seen at the very beginning. Anyway, so anyway, I'll put the link below for you. Read it at your own leisure. You know, all that good stuff. Don't just listen to what I have to say. Anyway, let's get into the story. He was employed to care for people. Instead, he forced himself. Instead, he forced himself on a hospital patient in her bed. Sorry, I'm having to watch the words that I'm using, obviously, for the YouTube algorithm. Healthcare assistant told woman, "You won't see me again. It doesn't matter," before forcing himself on her in her bed. A Western hospital staff member forced himself and something assaulted a patient in her bed. Siddharth Near, don't even know how you pronounce that name, had worked at the site for only a matter of weeks before he subjected his victim to a series of outrageous and predatory attacks for his own gratification. The vile forcing himself upon her even had intercourse with her against her will, having told her, "You won't see me again, it doesn't matter." Liverpool Crown Court heard this afternoon. I mean, can you imagine that? You've gone into hospital for treatment, you're in your hospital bed, and then somebody who's supposed to be looking after you gets in bed with you and starts doing things to you, and you're in absolutely no state whatsoever to protect yourself from happening. And then he says, "It doesn't matter. We're never going to see each other again." What the heck sort of person is this? And why are we allowing this to happen in our country as well? And I mean, we really do need to look at the death penalty coming back for stuff like this. And I know I keep saying it, and I will continue to say it, but this is just totally unacceptable. And this is the worst sort of predatory behaviour. You know, this is preying on somebody in a hospital bed like that is so disgusting. I mean, forcing yourself on something like that anyway is bad enough. However, doing it, it's like attacking an old person or a baby. You know, like there are degrees of evil, and this is like on one of the lowest degrees of evil. Well, sorry, the highest degrees, as in how bad it is you can do. Absolutely shocking. I just can't understand why we tolerate this kind of behaviour like we do. And I know there'll be people saying, "Oh, well, you know, prison." I don't care. I mean, this man shouldn't be breathing anymore. He should be swinging from a gallows, as far as I'm concerned. You know, there's no justification for allowing this individual to continue living. He's completely unforgivable what he's done there. We just absolutely should not be tolerating this. So Liverpool Crown Court heard this afternoon, Wednesday, that the 29-year-old had been responsible for providing care for the woman while she was still an inpatient. However, she began, yeah, well, is that what he thought that he meant by care? Oh, don't worry, love. I'm going to take care of you. I mean, what is the heck is going on with this person in his mind? You know, the man himself looks like he's from India, and I'm going to be guessing that he isn't. I do believe that he was off the boat as well. You know, so I don't think he's like an Indian person who was born here. And there is serious questions to be asked about hiring people from these parts of the world where that sort of behaviour is quite normal. And there's a case I was reading about the other day about an Indian woman who was either a man or a gang man. She's an Indian doctor. She's a doctor, by the way, like an actual proper, like a medical doctor. And she's been brutally assaulted and I believe killed as well. But then all the adult video sites have seen a surge in that woman's name where there's men in it, but in India, because they can tell where the searches are coming from, and men in India have been trying to find this videos of this woman being attacked in the hospital by men. It's absolutely. I mean, there's something actually wrong going on there. Like culturally speaking, there is something really, really wrong going on there. And I'm not saying that to any individual people who are from there and are perfectly fine people, but there is something really, really in the culture baked into it. It's terrible. However, she began to have concerns over Nair's behaviour when he started to sniff her underwear. I mean, that's not just slightly concerning. I mean, that's just a great big massive red flag being waved straight away while he was searching for a fresh pair for her to change into. That's just shocking. I mean, this is another reason as well why you shouldn't really have men doing this sort of work anyway, because that could have been prevented if you just don't have men looking after vulnerable women. I mean, we've got to accept that there are predatory men in the world. So, and again, this is part of the whole, the multicultural, everybody's the same, all humans are interchangeable units that are all fungible parts that can be swapped in with. No, humans are biological creatures, unfortunately, with different expectations and standards. We've got to start accepting that as a reality. This is, and I'm not saying there aren't white people who aren't nonces either. There clearly are, because they're in prison. The best thing really is with women like that, you just don't have men near them. Just have women looking after women. That's why the Victorians did things the way they did, because they understood and accepted those sorts of things. We live in such a weird time in history where basic realities are being ignored and being looked at as backwards. When for centuries, the entirety of human history, people have known these basic things. I can't get my head around how people can be so educated yet so thick at the same time. Paul Becker, prosecuting, described how the healthcare assistant was later brushing her hair when he began to tell her, "Look how pretty your face is. You've got beautiful eyes. I wish you had a pen and paper so I could draw your eyes." I mean, that's just inappropriate. I mean, even if all this other stuff hadn't have happened, that's just massively, massively inappropriate thing to say to somebody in your care. It's just really creepy vibes off this guy. Nair of Jason Street in Everton returned to her bedside around an hour later and began massaging her feet and telling her that they appeared swollen. He then claimed that he needed to do a body map before groping her breast. What an absolute nonce. She was subsequently requested assistance to be taken to the toilet. The staff member appeared to then remove her underwear, began messing with her wet wipe, and sexually assaulted her. At this, she told him, "Get off and leave me alone." The same evening, Nair returned after the victim's family had visited her and took her to the toilet, where he attempted to clean her and told her that he needed to examine her breasts once more. When he tried to kiss her neck, she told him, "What are you doing? I'm not well, just leave me be." It's absolutely disgusting what he's doing. This guy, genuinely, this is the sort of thing you do need the noose bringing back for. I just can't get my head over how people will just think that it's fine to just send this man to prison. It's just not acceptable. This is just beyond acceptable behaviour, She then returned to her bed, but was followed by Nair, who unzipped his trousers, took hold of her hand before forcing her to touch him, and she pleaded, "Get off me, I don't want this, get off me." I'm curious as well, where are other people on the wards? Because surely, I can't understand. I mean, she's clearly in a room on her own reading this. But surely there's got to be other people on the floor who can hear this sort of thing while she's screaming at him going on. I doubt she'll have been very quiet. He, however, replied, "It's okay. After this, you won't see me again. It doesn't matter." That's disgusting. Nair then forced himself on her in her hospital bed. Afterwards, he visited the bathroom and left after telling her, "I won't see you again." What? That makes it okay? It's just going to magically disappear? I mean, this is the problem with these people. I remember watching a video as well with Ross Kemp, and he was in somewhere in Africa, and he was with a gang of African guys who forced themselves regularly onto women. And he's asking these guys, so how do you think it affects the women? And they can't get their heads around these guys in this video. If I find it, I'll link it below. But the basic gist is the guys couldn't actually grab the concept that they were actually traumatising the victims. And all he kept talking about was things like HIV or getting the girls pregnant. Every time he was asking this question. And you can see the hamster can't even get on the wheel in the brains. So I don't even think this guy might even have a concept of what he's doing is actually damaging to his victim. It's so strange. So strange. He was said to have timed his offending as he knew nobody would be around due to the ward being in the midst of. He was answering my questions now, being in the midst of a changeover in staff at the beginning and the end of it. Yeah, but there should still be people actually on the ward. It's not like everybody vacates the ward and there's like a 10-minute point where there's nobody on the ward and then people come back on again. There's like a changeover, surely. Like when I was in the army on guard, your changeover time was when you had the most staff on at any one time because you had the new lot coming in doing the handover takeover and the old lot leaving once the new lot were installed. I can't understand. That really doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest with you. At the beginning, while the victim was being given pain medication, which had left her drowsy, so he knew. Well, that's. I mean, there again, he's gone for her when she's at her most vulnerable, which is even worse. He's incredibly predatory. In a statement which was read out in court on her behalf, she said, "There are nights when I cry myself to sleep." I'm not surprised. That's absolutely. She must be absolutely traumatized, the poor lady. "I'm struggling to comprehend how I can live with what happened to me. I don't think I can live a normal life." No, she's going to be terrified, especially going to hospital again. This lady might never ever be able to go into hospital ever again. I find myself playing back the incident in my mind and it's making me physically sick. I no longer feel able to do normal things we did as a family. I'm not surprised that she can't. Nair, who was known as Charlie by his colleagues, had only commenced his employment at Wiston Hospital just over 2 weeks before the incident. He had no previous convictions. I couldn't care less if he had no previous convictions. He'll still get the noose. And who's to say that he hasn't been doing this to other people as well, you know? Nicole Daly, defending, told the court he is 29 years of age, having never been in trouble before. He is someone the court can impose a determinate sentence of imprisonment upon, knowing that he will spend a long time in prison and have time to work with the authorities. I don't think that's. I really don't think that's good enough. I genuinely believe that this guy should get the noose, and people like him. Like, there is absolutely no use to society that this man poses whatsoever. That is something he says he wants to do to prevent it from happening again. He has said in his letter to the court, "I want to get help." Well, of course he wants to get help now afterwards. Yeah, it's easy to say you want to get help after the event, isn't it? I want to understand why I did what I did. I don't want to be that person. He is unable to explain why he did what he did. He has pleaded guilty, which is somewhat unusual in many cases of this nature. He has never committed any other offence or shown on any other day any similar behaviour. He came to this country to work and support his family in India and set up with his wife. Well, I think he knows exactly what he's done. I think this is to try and play the part of the remorseful individual to try and get a lenient sentence, to be honest with you. I don't believe a single part of it. I think this is probably a normal thing for him back in India. I wouldn't be surprised if this man has many victims. Now, obviously, I have no evidence of that, and that's pure speculation on my behalf. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. He is now in the country alone. He only has himself to blame for that. I mean, I can't get my head around people who can't understand the risk of bringing in people from places like India. I really can't, and I'm not trying to make a blanket statement on all Indian people. It's just there is going to be an increased statistical chance of things like this happening, and we've got to ask ourselves, is it worth the risk? My opinion is, no, it's not. We need to find alternatives to dealing with this sort of problem, this lack of money, like maybe training British people to do these jobs. Who knew? Who thought? Or is it just a case that the NHS don't want to pay the wages, like with many businesses, while a lot of these places are so hooked on mass migration? And that's what it boils down to, really, is cost. Wages, and they don't want to pay. It's that simple. Nair admitted forcing himself onto her, assault by insertion, and 2 counts of assault, appearing via video link to HMP Alt Course. He sat with his hands held together and appeared to be in tears and sobbing as he was jailed for 13 years. Well, he'll probably only serve about 7 with that, you know, and he'll have the rest of it will be suspended. Sentencing, that's what people don't understand about sentencing in the UK. When they say you've got, like, say, 10 years, you don't do 10 years in prison. You do half of the sentence in prison and then half of it on remand. Sentencing, Judge Catherine Pierpoint said, "That day, your behaviour at first was odd and peculiar." That's an understatement of the century, I'm afraid, Judge Catherine Pierpoint. It was not only... I suppose they've got to be careful with the words, those judges, haven't they? It was not only odd and peculiar, it was inappropriate behaviour for somebody working at that hospital in the role as a carer. Yeah, it's not really taking care of the people under you, you know. It's shocking. It's predatory. It's pure nonce behaviour is what it is. However, then took a much more sinister turn in my judgment. You were testing the waters to see how far you could go without her seeing anything. Yeah, absolutely. Like a predator. Like a pack of wolves nipping at the heels of a moose to see what they can get away with and see what the reaction's going to be. You took the opportunity that existed with a changeover in staff, knowing that you were highly unlikely to be disturbed. She told you no. She told you to stop and leave her alone. You took no notice of that, more interested in your own gratification than her needs. You forced yourself upon her in that bed. She was left devastated, confused, and upset. One can only begin to imagine the distress she was in. It's absolutely harrowing what's happened to this lady. Especially that she was dosed up on painkillers as well. So it'll have been like some sort of fever dream to her, I imagine. Like incapable of, she'll have been aware that it was happening, but probably unable to react to it or do anything. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. She's a brave woman who stood up to you by reporting matters. Absolutely agree with that. But your attack on her has had serious consequences. She is left suffering from anxiety and depression, and your offended has impacted on her work and family life. And the thing with this as well is this isn't an uncommon thing. This happens a lot in care homes as well with old people, where old people end up getting assaulted and attacked by imported workers as well. And I do believe it is quite a large scandal within the care industry where multiple people are being routinely attacked. And it really does need looking into. But the fact that this is happening in a hospital is absolutely even worse. Well, I don't know why I'm saying that, because it's not really even worse, is it? I mean, these people it's just as bad. No, I take that back. It's just as bad. This really needs highlighting to people. People need to understand just what is really going on in these places with all this cheap labour from abroad. I'm just going to see what it says now. I'm just skipping a bit of this up here because we've gone over most of that. Merseyside Police Detective Inspector Joseph Al-Ramadan said, following today's sentences, this was a shocking incident which has had a devastating impact on Nair's victim and her family. She's clearly been through an extremely traumatic time, and we hope that today's sentencing brings her some sense of justice as she continues to recover. Thankfully, we were able to detain and arrest Nair very quickly and ensure that he's now to spend a considerable period of time behind bars, and I hope that knowing this will finally allow his victim to start to move on with her life. I would like to thank Wiston Hospital for their support throughout this investigation. Nair will be required to serve 2/3 of his prison term behind bars, so a little bit more than what I said when I said 7, so he's going to be looking at about 9 or 10 years in prison before becoming eligible for release on licence. He was also given a restraining order and told to sign the S-Offenders Register for life. It's just shocking. Absolutely shocking story. I have obviously cut a little bit out of the end then. Please do read that yourself. Simply because we're getting on to, 18 minutes now. Quite a longer story than I realised that. Just a shocking story. I'm surprised more of a thing hasn't been made about that, and I really do think that more people need to be aware of it. As I say, I've only just found out about it today, that being 22nd of August. Shocking. Terrible story, and I just can't believe that something like that has happened and hasn't been highlighted more to people. Anyway, wherever you are, thanks for watching. Whether you agree with me or you don't, please do like, subscribe. Definitely put comments below. I love hearing what people have to say, reading about it. Even if you don't agree with me, I'm not a closed book on my opinions, and I am actually willing to change my mind if you're as long as your argument's strong enough. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.